What's going on today, Internet? Selfish here with Retrospect. Right here in my hands, I have a Miyoo A30, which is the little brother to the Miyoo Mini, a device that arguably for the last 2 years has been one of the most popular devices in retro gaming. This is a horizontal version of that for people who prefer horizontal handhelds. Today we're going to get our first impressions and see if it meets the task. Let's take a look. Instead of an unboxing, we're going to have an unbagging experience. So Miyoo right off the bat builds in the value with this really nice case. It actually is pretty hard too, so it will protect the device. Instead of a box, you do get this case, which builds up about a $10 value if you're looking on AliExpress. Comes with its own scroll, which has words and things on it telling you how to use the device. Get that out of the way. Also, it comes with a USB to Type-C cable. It comes with a USB to 355 adapter. Reason being is this does not have a headphone hole. And it also a 64 gig memory card, which is beyond cheap. I'm actually surprised they didn't just try to pretend to buff this off just to make it look even more knockoff-ishy than this nameless 64 gig memory card. So on top of all this stuff we got right here, we do get the device. Full disclosure, I did make a clone of the memory card and spent about an hour with the device when I realized I should make a first impression video and then move forward with tweaking things. So like we always do, we'll go through the I/O here real quick. On the top here, you do have your shoulder buttons. They do actually have a pretty good feel to them. Not a lot of travel, which is nice. You do have your volume up and down, and they are in the right order, so that's pretty cool. You do have a C-hole. You also do have a home button, aka function button, but in a lot of instances, it really is a home button. Say you're playing PSP, you hit that. As some of you may know, it's going to be running off PPSSPP for PSP, and so this will actually just bring you literally to the home screen. On the back here, we do have a nice gray finish, I guess, on the back here where it does say Miyoo. On the sides over here, we do have the power button. One thing you will find is that you do have to hold this for about 5 seconds before the device will power on, so you're not going to accidentally power the device on. As you see, the lights aren't turning on as I'm clicking it. That's a really nice feature, so you either have to inset it or you have to create a delay. Either way it works. This is the direction that Miyoo went, and it works just fine. On the side over here, we have nothing. On the bottom down here, we do have a SD card hole or TF hole, depending on where you are. I did clone over the card to a 128. My recommendation would be don't use a blue and white card. It looks really ugly in here, as you can see. You can see the card. I'm actually going to probably reclone this into a black card, but that's nor here nor there. That's just my OCD kicking in. On the front here, we do have a D-pad. A little smaller than some D-pads, but it's pretty close to the Miyoo D-pad. It is a little off. It doesn't quite have the same feel, which is really unfortunate because Miyoo really nailed that D-pad, and I'm pretty sure it's the same size or very, very similar to the Miyoo Mini's D-pad. It would have been nice to see them fix that. Next, we do have our face buttons, which are full size. Nice to see in a device this size. I wouldn't call this a micro device. I would call this a mini class device, but it is nice to see full-size buttons. A lot of times you will see smaller buttons, which is terribly annoying. You do have your start and select buttons right here, and then you do have a joystick that does have L3. One thing that's unique about this device, for being in a plastic shell, it does have a metal front plate. Now, when they initially talked about this device, they made it out like we were going to be able to swap these front plates out. This is not going to be hot swappable, as far as I can tell, unless you actually have to open the device and unpin it from the back. But from what I can tell, we are stuck with the plate that we have, so I guess I'm stuck with this color, because it was all that was available, because these things sold out in a matter of, it seemed like minutes, but I think hours. This was my choice. Sad day. Moving along. We're going to turn the device on here real quick. As we turn it on, I'm going to go through some of the specs here for you real quick. This is running on a Linux operating system. The Onion team does have the device in hand. We're hoping to see an Onion build. I can't guarantee that. They may decide not to build it. We learned recently that Black Sheriff, as great as he is with Garlic, he also has other things to do, and he hasn't been working on Garlic since these 35XX devices came out a few months ago, and everybody was anticipating that being out months ago. Part of the reason why I wanted to do a first impression video is I want to go in with the expectation of what it would be like to get this as a consumer, not assume that you're going to get some custom firmware for it. So this is running an all-winner A33, which we will talk about a little bit more here coming up. The GPU is a Mali 400 MP2. It is a 2.8-inch IPS display at 640 by 480. The memory is running at 12 megabytes. It's got 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi, and it is nice to see Wi-Fi in a value device, which we are starting to see a little bit more of, but not a ton of yet. And then the battery on here is a 3.7 volt, 2600 millihour battery, which is not very much, to be honest with you. You can squeeze some power out of this. You do have some access to some CPU choices as well, as far as how much power you're actually going to draw from the device itself. We're going to kind of do that a little bit. Here is the main screen that it loads into when you first get the device. Nothing super special here, but it does look kind of cool. You do actually have a bunch of themes, about 20, 25 of them maybe, that are on here already, including the Onion OS theme. So if you really want to trick people, you could put the Onion OS theme on here. I think they're just trying to put a little pressure on Onion by including their own theme on here, trying to get them to obviously create their operating system onto this device, which may take some time because what they've been doing before have been vertical devices. This will be their first horizontal, so it'll be interesting to see. In your settings, you do have some things like calibrating your joystick. Thankfully, that's in there because my joystick was off almost by a third outside on the left side and wasn't quite making it on the right. But after calibration, I believe everything works just fine now. So if we do a joypad, yeah, so now it's all working. Before you were seeing it up here somewhere and then not making it all the way across. So my axes are right, and it does actually bounce back pretty quickly. If you're watching and you're looking for some cardinal snapping, I'm not seeing it right now, but you know, you never know after this gets a little bit of use. You can map your keys on here as well as sign into your Wi-Fi and things like that. On top of that, you do have the ability to change the frequency of your CPU, which will do some over and underclocking for you. That is a capability that's on here, as well as the ability to use this as a USB storage mode in order to connect to your computer. One of the biggest complaints people have on here is the brightness. I have mine at 8. This is 10. This is as bright as it gets. I guess it'd be a little bit easier if we took that off of there. Not a super bright device. Now here on the home screen, you could cheat that a little bit by putting a lighter background on here. They do have this exact same theme in white, but I don't really care about the home screen. I care about when I'm gaming, and that doesn't change anything for gaming. That just makes it easier to see if you're in the sun on this home screen. Oddly enough, it doesn't get very dark either. Something that you don't see very often on a device that is kind of missing on the brightness scale. It's also missing on the darkness scale. You shouldn't be able to see this right now. This would be a hard one to play in bed. So if you go above like 7 or 8 though with the brightness, it seems like it starts to wash out a little bit. So I would say stay around 7 or 8 unless you really are out in the sun. You're going to need to go to 10 and maybe even 15 with the way that this is working. A little bit more on here, we do have an apps area, so you do again have that USB storage. You have access to this and you can just hook it to your computer, transfer files that way, and you do have direct access to RetroArch. Now RetroArch is going to be where you're going to see all these cores if you go into here, and these are all RetroArch cores that you can load directly into the core. I don't think you're going to need this unless you're an advanced user. There's not a lot in here even for me, but if I go into the games here, I can see all the different systems that are on here. Now when I did clone it, I did add a couple of games to a couple systems that weren't on here. That way we could try to test them out a little bit. Testing here is going to be pretty minimal today. I got a little frustrated when I was just trying to do setup and tested a couple of games. So I know there's some tweaking that needs to be done. I don't know why Mio didn't do it. They've had plenty of time to figure it out and they just didn't. But as you can see, you do have a plethora of systems. One thing that is a little quirky about this that I would like to point out though, because I got a little lost on this, Game Boy and Game Boy Color are in the same folder. There's another device that does this and I can't remember what it is, but it took me a while to find Game Boy Color, but it's right here and then you can see your Game Boy Color game. Kind of makes sense because a lot of emulation that people do is through a Game Boy Color emulator. It really threw me off because I was like, whoa, there's no Game Boy Color on here? That doesn't make any sense, but there it is. Moving right along to you still have a favorite area and then your recent area on the front end here. We're going to just do a couple of games here real quick. I'm going to just hit the higher end systems just so you can see. Now this will play to PS1 just fine and even a lot of PSP, but some PSP is absolutely terrible. Now we're just going to leave everything set the way that it came from factory for the most part. I know people have been having problems with SNES. I went in and tried to fix the problem that people have been having because a lot of people are getting these devices and there's a shader that's already turned on, which is screwing up the performance of SNES. I went in, my shader is not on. So I don't know if that was just a pre-launch problem, but if I go into SNES, my shader's turned off. So it's not affecting the performance in there. In fact, we'll just go in and we'll start with a SNES game here real quick, and then we'll kind of go from there. As far as this D-pad goes, it is different than the other Mio Minis. I have no problems with it at all when I'm using the keys, and for any kind of game really. A lot of these are absolutely the wrong emulators on here, but we're just gonna deal with it. Also, most of the emulators I found and or most of the games will not allow you to utilize this joystick, so it became almost pointless. Even the main menus for Mio, you can't use the joystick. So like in this game here, I can't use it, but I might play another game under the system that does allow me to use it. We're holding a solid 60 FPS right now, so it's not having any issues. But again, that shader was turned off for me, so I don't know how to do this. I've never actually played this level before. I'm guessing I have to throw her through there. Yeah, so I'm not having any issues here. It looks really good. It's really clean, no problems. Killed myself, you know, life's good. All right, so that's the kind of your typical SNES experience. I'll try one more game just to see what happens here. Again, I'm going to try to keep this video pretty short. Let's do a little Street Fighter 2 and see if the Street Fighter game will work out good on here. Also, the other thing I've noticed is none of the games are catching up to retro achievements. They all say no achievements available. Haven't figured that out yet because I actually am signed in. It is signing in as well. It just says no achievements available on every single thing that I've tried to do. So as you can see here, now we're sitting at 49, 50 FPS, and this might be a PAL ROM, honestly. And then here again, if I go into use I'm guessing the joystick doesn't work on here. Yeah, so no joystick. So again, pointless game for having the joystick. You are going to be able to use it more on like PSP type games, which is good. So yeah, so that is, I think, running at full speed. I'd have to go back and look, but I'm pretty sure that's a PAL ROM. Word of the wise, if you do have the shaders turned on, turn them off. I didn't change any of the clocking or anything like that. I know that's what people were trying to do in order to fix that problem. So we're just going to jump up here a little bit, mostly because we're going to play some systems that Mios haven't been able to play before. We'll do Dreamcast first. So one thing about this, I don't know if you can hear this, it won't stop vibrating the entire time you're playing. It just vibrates. But you can use, on this one, the joystick. So that's kind of neat. And also these probably need to be remapped. They use R2, L2 like they normally do for your gas and brake, but they're in just the worst spots on this device because they're not hard buttons to hit, but they kind of suck to hold on to when you're going over the top of your outer shoulder buttons. Now I would say even without being at full FPS, this game is playable. At least for me, it doesn't really bother me a whole lot. There are some dips every once in a while, which kind of suck, but I've had way worse games that I've played before. Yeah, so there, we just dropped down to 20 FPS, but we were stopped, so it didn't matter, but now we're stuck at 22, so this is not an optimal place to be, and it really depends on how many things are on the screen at the time, so that's a good look at that. Now, when I was trying this before, N64 was the worst. Oh, I forgot I was going to measure the heat on this, which I just have a head thermometer, so when we started, it didn't register, so we're already up to 100. So we started below 80 degrees, so now we're already up to 100. It's not the worst it gets, but that's a head thermometer, so it stops at 110. We'll see if it gets to the point where it fails out because it thinks you're dead. But I found on standby, it stays about 90 degrees. Within 20 minutes, it will jump above that 110 degree mark. All right, so here we are, we're idling about 14 FPS, and it's going to be like this until we break out of the pack here, which is absolutely obnoxious, but that's how you can tell it's having a really hard time with how many things are on the screen. And the less cars we have on the screen, the closer it's going to be to getting to native FPS. Oh, we dropped down to 9.6. Game, it feels like it's moving faster, but the FPS is not going any faster. It will eventually pick up here, though. Once again, I was going to say, well, this is the way not to get in accidents, but now I'm going to pile up. Well, anyways, this game's unplayable, and it will eventually open up, but as soon as you start getting into a pack of cars again, you're screwed. This is my ROM that I've used on different devices before, and it's not recognized by RetroArch, which it is in every other time I've ever used it. Again, I can't use the joystick, which would be actually about perfect for this, because then you're getting more of an arcade mode. But yeah, this D-pad works just fine for what I need it for. Good for button mashing. Okay, let's try something else here real quick. Also, this would be a good time to point out you actually can put in cover art. Some of the files that I added have cover art, so I added the cover art with the files. What I had done there is if you hit over, is it over? Yeah, if you hit over to the right, you actually can get into the cover art folders. Otherwise, you're still going to be on this menu here. So this, the core has a counter built into it, so whatever settings they put on here, it's already built in, but it's freezing as it's trying to load in. So its internal FPS is at 23. And it's trying to stay at a locked 60. Yeah, so this seems to be holding up actually pretty good. So PlayStation, like I said, I noticed did pretty well. PSP was kind of hit or miss before, but that might actually have to do with the temperature of the device, because these are the last that I tested before too. Let's see where we're at right now. 105.7, so we've almost maxed it out. We're at 105.7. It's already gone up 5 degrees since I just tested it. So in just a few minutes, it's gone up 5 degrees. Okay, while we're in PSP, I just want to show you a couple of things. So when you go into your settings, it's very limited. For one, you only have OpenGL. There's no Vulkan on this yet. Some games will not allow you to change the rendering. Some will not allow you to change it. So just be aware that you'll run into games that do not allow you to change rendering or change your frame skip, anything like that. The other thing is when you come in here to Retro Achievements, you actually can't log in. If you try to use a physical keyboard, I tried it earlier, it doesn't save anything even if you have it logged in. So just be aware of that. There's no good way to get Retro Achievements on this device right now because it doesn't recognize for some reason any of the games. And here we should probably see a fall off if it happens like it did last time. So as you saw, we don't have frame skip or anything on. We're at 1x. It's telling me to turn frame skip on because we are running at 22 frames per second. Let's try this again. When I tried to do frame skip before, it locked me out. The game kept playing in the background, but I was stuck in this menu. And then if I hit the menu buttons again, it would let me back in, but I couldn't do anything about it. It's working a lot better right now than it did before, so. Oh, good. So with frame skip on, now we're running at 9 FPS. We were doing much better before. So we'll go back in, we'll turn that off. The chip's just getting hotter. So we're back to where we started, right? And if I do that a couple more times, eventually it's not gonna let me back into the game. The game will keep playing without me. But as you can see, we're getting slower and slower, even though we're back to the original settings that we were on when we came in here. We're gonna try a different game out. We'll go with some Tekken or something, just to get a feel for it. Oh, I can use the joypad on this one, but we're running at 22 frames per second. Not exactly the best way to play Tekken 6. It's nice to be able to do your moves even though you're running at 11 FPS. So when this is not hot, PSP works really good. As soon as it gets hot, you're screwed, and it gets really hot in some of these games in PSP, just the amount of rendering it needs to do. Peaked our 110 max. Yep, so we're over 110 degrees already. So there you go. That's anybody that complains about being hot. Now you know it gets hot. 110 is the max on that thermometer, so once it does that, it says high. When it's below its 80 mark, it says low, which is exactly what happened when we started, and it's obviously gradually gone up. It takes about 20 minutes to get this above 110 degrees if you're doing any heavier emulation, I would say. Let's talk about the chip that's in here real quick. There was a device about 3 years ago called the Pocket Boy Go S30. Almost set up exactly the same, but with a little bit bigger screen. It actually looked like the SF2000 from Datafrog. So that kind of device with this chipset 3 years ago, performing relatively the same as this does. Granted, the emulators weren't as good 3 years ago as they are today, but this is actually a 10-year-old microchip that's in here. I feel like they pulled a Nintendo Switch on us and put some old-ass Tegra chip in here, but it's not a Tegra, it's an Allwinner chip, but, you know, the whole idea behind it is relatively the same. So this just does not perform the way that you would expect a Miyoo device to perform. Now, I've used the stock operating system on Miyoo devices before. It's not great, but it doesn't perform like this. This particularly reminds me of one specific device by Powkiddy. I think the closest you can get is to this device right here. This is the Q90. Now, this doesn't have L2, R2, and it doesn't have L3. More or less is very similar and plays similar libraries. And this oddly is running on a custom Miyoo firmware. This is a pretty cheap feeling device, right? I mean, they're really inexpensive, but this even has battery door access, right? Dual speakers. But this device here is really inexpensive and it feels cheap. This feels sturdier. I mean, if you want to compare the two, this feels like a premium device. What do you want when you get something this small that's made out of plastic? It's not going to feel the best. We're going to find out if this is heavier because it is smaller, and heavier always feels premium. It doesn't mean it's premium, but it feels premium. So our Powkiddy Q90 is coming at 124 grams and our Miyoo A30 is coming in at 110. So it actually is lighter, but for the size, it feels heavier. Part of that may well be the fact that it seems sturdier because it's not clear, and there's a metal shell in the front, which gives it a little bit of stability. So the reason why I wanted to do a first impressions video is because, in conclusion, I don't really have a pros and cons to give to this device quite yet. The overall comfort and feel and build quality of this device is what you would expect for this device to be, and it's solid. I like it. It's comfortable. It's easy to use. I'm a little disappointed in its performance. I think that has a lot to do with the way that it's set up, though, so I think that we can squeeze some more out of it. So I don't want to discount this device quite yet until I get an opportunity to play around with it a while and see if I can make it perform better. On PSP, playing Tekken 6, now it's not good yet, but we're at 30 frames per second. So the heat definitely has something to do with it, because nothing has changed. I just let it sit and stand by. So it's not even completely cooled down, because it is still somewhat processing in the background. But if we take a look here real quick, the temperature has dropped about at least 14 degrees, and now the device is playing between 30 and 37. So it's not good, but it's a lot better than it was. So the heat definitely has something to do with why these games are slowing down. I am a little disappointed also, there is a big gouge right here. You probably can't see it on the camera, but there's a big gouge here that came with my device. So it came that way, which is kind of a bummer. But, you know, what can you do about that? It was packaged well, so it must have happened at the factory. So I'm going to play around with this for a bit. That way we get a better feel for how it fits in. So look forward to an upcoming video. Kind of comes off like I'm giving this a pass, but I'm really not. I just haven't had the time that I normally would with the device prior to doing a review. I do like doing these first look videos, though, because this is the consumer experience. The average person that were to purchase this device, this is what they would be going through, which is completely different than somebody who's been doing this for a long time, possibly yourself included if you're watching this, where you'd be able to get this set up and make it work better. I think that's where we're going to leave this here today. Let me know what you think down in the comment section down below. Is this device you already ordered? Is it something you've been looking at getting? Do you think it's going to perform well once we kind of tweak it a little bit? Let me know. I'd just like to know your thoughts and your feelings all about it. But that's all I got for today. Don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, share this video with your friends, because sharing helps grow the channel, and we're all just here trying to grow together. So we got a good little community going here, and it would be great to add some new family and friends, so to speak. But that's all I got for today. And if you're still sticking around, there is a subscribe button floating around the screen and a couple of videos that Google says that you're going to like. And if you don't get to the end of the videos very often, Google usually picks the videos for you, and I usually let them. So Google picked these based off of your history. So apparently they think you're going to like them. But that's all I got for today. I'm out. Bye-bye!